Empower 11, the best of its kind in a highly transformative time. Are you empowered? Ready to turn your life up to 11? Awaken the life of who you are on the inside to match the life you were meant to live on the outside. Empower 11. Now is your time.
Empower 11 Radio. Greetings and welcome to Empower 11 Radio. This is our live 1-hour show coming to you from Santa Barbara, Michigan. Santa Barbara, I was in Michigan last week. For more information about Empower 11, go to empower11.com. That's empower11.com. And keep that feedback coming in. You have questions, comments, anything you want to lay on us, just contact us at info@empower11.com. Be sure to check us out on Facebook as well and like us there, because you can get kept up on everything that's going on with Empower 11. That's facebook.com/Empower 11. We are coming to you on our platform, which is Spreaker, and you can download that app on your smartphone, whether it be an iPhone or an Android, or you can listen to us on Spreaker.com, after which the radio show gets podcasted on iTunes. You can check us out on iTunes. Also, check out our Empower Wealth audio album that is now available on iTunes and Amazon. Also, Amazon, you can get it physically. You can order the physical CD if you like. And today is August 22nd, 2012. I am Jack Voorhees, and next to me is the beautiful and talented and amazing partner that I am so blessed to have, Ann Ribley.
Well, hello there, Jack Voorhees. You're quite extraordinary yourself. You are warm, caring, compassionate, and a brilliant genius. So, happy to be doing the show with you, Jack.
Well, today our show is all about going beyond the trap of the ego, and I know a lot about this. I mean, I'm probably in fact, beyond probably, I am the most talented person that could ever do this show and knows more about ego than anybody else. In fact, I should have a plaque on my wall that says #1 authority on ego, and the president should really have me, come there, and so I could talk to the world about how much I know about this, because I am, in fact, I think I should just do this show by myself, because I'm just so great. And
Jack is back.
So
it's fun to be with you in the studio. He was gone last week. If those of you caught last week's show, he was in Michigan, and we had to do it via Skype. That's why he said Santa Barbara, Michigan. Yeah. But anyway.
Yeah, and that was something too, because I kept having all these technical problems while I was trying to get the thing going, and the wireless where I was at wasn't working properly, and I had to hard connect, and I was end up recording in the hallway of my mother's cottage, and it was interesting. But okay, so today, going beyond the ego trap, Ann, what does that mean to you?
Well, first I want to talk about the importance, the power of this conversation of going beyond the trap of the ego. We could throw up a topic that's even the Empower Wealth. It sounds more sexy and inviting to want to study how to empower wealth in our life. What I found is that the ego is just such a blockage to all the things that we desire. So the topic is just so worth going deep into and having a conversation about how everything we desire, from love to career and purpose and money and financial gain, though that the road to those places can be so much more directly accessed when we understand how our ego can trap us and hold us back.
Yeah. There's this guy that I knew in high school. We were great friends from about fourth grade to 12th grade. Well, it was beyond that. And we actually were roommates for a while and everything. But something happened when he was a senior in high school. And, he was a guy that was really kind of shy. The girls liked him and stuff, but he was very, very shy and stuff. And then I remember he was like at this party, he got really drunk, and like people was like really responding to him. He was like letting loose and stuff, and people were really responding to that and thought like, oh, he was cool, And he really responded to that, and he kind of like just developed. After that, he was like just living this other persona, which was not the truth of who he was, but the truth or the what he thought that people wanted and empowered him. So he was living in that, and I knew it was like a lie. I could even see it, and at my young age, I was aware enough to see that he was living this false kind of identity. And he actually died a couple years ago. 40 was he about 42 years old, 43 years old. Died of alcoholism. He had a problem with his liver, and he drank his liver away basically. And I just never got that cool John back. We were really good friends, and then as soon as he became all wild and all this stuff and not acting like in the truth of who he was, then it was just, I could see it, and it was like phony, and he thought it empowered him, but I know that it didn't.
Yeah, this is when I truly believe that the more we can keep our ego in check, the more we can understand even what it is and how it's showing up in our behaviors. And it's so subtly ingrained in different habits and ways that we are. Sometimes it's even hard to recognize. But I do know that, and I do believe this to be true, that if you do not soften that part of you that is dominated or prevalent as the ego, life will do it for you. And it happens in smaller ways that it shows up, and it keeps getting bigger and bigger and louder till, well, it could be the death of you. It could be the death of a life, from a marriage to a career. The ego, I know, can take you down if you're not aware of how to really recognize it within yourself. Now, there's a lot of people who maybe are going to have that extreme like takedown from their ego. However, because they've tamed it enough to be at a functional level, but it will still be a blockage to going to that really highly empowered 11 type state in our lives.
Hmm. Yeah, I know that the power that we have is all getting into this truth of who we are and getting in, that special place inside of you, and where all your real treasures are, and developing those and presenting those to the world. I know that's where your real power is, but then there's this place where you can get this misplaced validation, this you're attempting to matter and to influence, and it's basically giving power to others because the way they think of you becomes your self-validation,
your sense of importance.
Yeah.
I look at it like with a small child. I mean, part of what's built in. This is where the ego, I don't feel like, is really understood. It's part of what's built into it. It's this immature personality that's built in for our survival. It's let me be seen, let me be heard, and you can see that children thrive on that. They thrive on being noticed, knowing they matter. And if a child is not noticed and they're not mattered, you can see that it doesn't allow them to keep expanding and evolving in their development. But what happens is when we have these behaviors that we haven't learned to mature, what happens is they become masked. And they're really childlike, immature behaviors, but they're masked in adult lives.
Yeah, it's not truth. I mean, it's pretending. It's lying to ourselves. And if we lie to ourselves long enough, we start to believe our own crap. And then that's where the trap is. I mean, when you're actually believing what you're this pretend, this lying to yourself stuff, you start to believe these lies. That is when you are in it. You are trapped.
Well, tell me how people pretend with their ego.
Well, they like I was saying earlier, that people, when they're getting validation from others, when they're seeing themselves through other people's eyes and not the truth of who they are, and they're not getting into this place of like really knowing themselves. So then there's this, everything's tied up in this outside validation. So you're trying to just get other people to think this and get other people to think that, and you're trying to force your own will and stuff. And it's interesting about that is I've been running into a lot lately is that people like about me that I kind of beat to my own drum and I just won't go along with the pack, and I make my own decisions, and until I don't go along with whatever they want me to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they're like, then like, what the hell? Yeah.
Well, I do see that the ego is a lower state of living that.
Oh, definitely.
Where in this immaturity that I was talking about, that's where when you go back to like the traits of a child that's still evolving, it's like that's where the jealousy and the comparison. I mean, I go through this all the time with my kids. Like my one son, well, both of them are really highly exceptional with math and on the top of their class. And then they're always racing with the other kid who's top, trying to be on top. And I have to keep going back to my kids, both my sons saying, you're not in a race with anybody but yourself. And it's this comparison, I think, that becomes poison, and it lives in the ego.
Yeah.
That becomes poison to our life. Now, fast forward to this comparison. Okay, so now here's my son, and he's trying to be top of his class with math, and he's competing with the other person. There's a sense of allowing this to rise up, but when you own it in an immature way, now it's keeping up with the Joneses. It's the comparison that is that pretend, false, lying to yourself life.
Right. It's when you're identifying other people with what they have, or it's like, that guy's really cool because he's got the cool car, and look at this guy, he's got the cool watch, he's got the beautiful wife, he's got the whatever. But that isn't like seeing somebody for who they are. It's seeing them for what they have, and that isn't the truth. So you figure you can, if you want to be like that person, you need to have those things in order to,
or even to measure
this happiness and this place where you want to go. But I mean, most people find that when they get the car, and then. Like for me, when I got my first car, I had this, I think it was like a 76 yellow Nova with this souped up 350 engine in this thing. And, I'm driving around thinking I'm all cool and everything. But that was just this ego. It was not a place of truth. And then you get older and you buy a new car and it's kind of cool for a little bit. But, it's just, it doesn't have anything to do with the truth of who you are.
Defining you.
Yeah. Because, you're more mature now, it's not an immaturity. Well, I should say, It's not true in all cases. I mean, many people will identify themselves with the car. They say, oh, when I get the Mercedes, and I'm driving the Mercedes, that means I'm cool. Or if I get to wear the Rolex watch, that means I'm cool. Because, only a few people get to wear Rolex watches, and I'm one of the few, so I'm cool.
Well, it's the measuring. It's the externalized measuring. I think that's the part of the ego that can really trap us and become a blockage from ever becoming our greatest self. Now, I went through this and I explained this to my son because this is true. That measuring and that comparison I told him there will always be someone smarter, and there will always be someone you're smarter than. There will be always someone better looking than you, and there will always be someone you're better looking than. And it goes on and on and on. There's always going to be someone who's going to have more money than you, and there's always going to be someone you're going to have more money than.
Wait. You mean there's somebody out there that's better looking than me? Really?
So,
I'm crushed. I am so crushed.
So the truth is, when we know what is the truth of ourselves, there is no measuring to the outside world. It is just this sweet spot of being the best of who we are in all the ways that we measure up to our own calling, our own truth of our lives. That we can do better than anybody else. And that's when you start shedding the ego, which places this power externalized out into the world. Now you think about it. Children come into the world and their energies are much more, they start out inward and then they go outward, and then they're exploring their world. And when we don't learn how to get into what I call that Empower 11 state, where we're one on the inside and one with what we're experiencing on the outside, this is where life can be hard. And we're not influencing our world the same way, because it's a maturing and an evolving that allows us to get into this place where we're not being falsely trapped.
So when we were talking about this yesterday, you were bringing up guilt and shame, and how does that integrate into this ego?
Well, that is the emotional component of the ego that takes us down, that tries to make us feel bad. This is the part of us, of the ego, that is in that lower state, that is not of that divine place, which constantly keeps us in a place of not being good enough, of feeling bad. So it's like there's this part of the ego that can be in the pride and in the highly intellectual, the intellectualized place of us of trying to be better and on top. And then there's the emotional part of the ego, which is the guilt, the shame, the comparison, the jealousy.
Yeah. And also people that are really in this egoic kind of a state, they do tend to try to guilt and shame others in order to, get the validation that they're looking for.
So this is it's a manipulative kind of like strategy that's used in this lower level, not only on ourselves but with other people. And I just know that when you boil it down, that when we talk about the ego being a false part of ourselves, and we've commonly heard the cliche that ego is edging God out. Well, okay, so if we really talk about like how guilt, how shame, how comparison, how jealousy are part of this emotional aspect of the ego, then those lower states that designed to make us feel bad, they're not based on truth. They are a falsehood in the sense that what we really are is this perfect divine expression of this person that's living in this physical body, in this physical life, and designed to be in unison and in a place of rapport with our world. And those components, guilt, shame, comparison, jealousy, those take us out of good rapport with our world.
And isn't ego something that's really, it can be difficult to stay out of? It's like something that, like, why am I, you got to ask yourself sometimes, why am I fighting to be right? If you ever caught yourself in that place, why is it so important to me to prove that I'm right when it doesn't really serve any huge purpose? I mean,
It shows up a lot that way, for sure, that the ego shows up a lot in a positional, needing to be right, needing to be heard kind of place. And what's interesting in that, it still circles back around to trying to matter, trying to validate. Oh my gosh. I mean, like, I listened to my two boys arguing about the most stupidest things, and one is younger, so his point of reference is more immature, and the other is older, and his point of reference is more mature. It's more evolved. So typically the older one has a more accurate understanding of what's going on, and the younger one doesn't. But they will both argue about who is right in their perception. And that part, that emotional makeup of the ego, see, that's the part I'm talking about. It's built in for our survival. It's built in to say, my opinions matter. I have something to say. But we can't stay stuck there. And we have to understand, and that staying stuck there is really an immature, childish type behavior when we don't become inclusive to allowing other people to have their own state. And that's the thing I have to work on with the two of them. It's like, you both are entitled to have your own opinion. And you can know your own truth out of it. We don't have to force. I mean, wars are fought over this. It's such an immature trait of the ego that it's time to, like, take this trap and look at it for what it is and raise ourselves up. That's what I love about the Empower 11 symbol. It's rising up to our matching possibility, rise up to really what is the potential of what we're designed to be.
Well, it's definitely a less evolved state. You know what I mean? You find these people that they just haven't found the ability to discover themselves for who they really are. Yeah. And a lot of people are afraid to look, I think. You know, they don't, they're afraid to see who they really are. I mean, when one of the hardest steps in the 12-step program is the 4th step, where you do an inventory of yourself. You know, you do this fearless moral inventory of yourself. And that is, it can be very difficult for people to go there. I mean, people will fight tooth and nail to try not to do this because they're afraid of what they'll see, because who they are is not necessarily, you know, the way they've been living.
Well, on the simple aspect of that, because I do think the more entrenched these behavioral personality orientations, which are infused with ego behaviors, I think it's harder for people to surrender that because they've already identified and cemented into their personality and persona who they are. I do think, though, that we got to revisit the fact that you are more than that. You are more than any of these defects. You're more than I'm saying defects in the sense of your character defects that are like not our most empowering states, and that we aren't that, and we're something more beyond that. I mean, I go back to how, when I was run over by a lawnmower, I was told constantly, you're so much more, you're not your legs. So I learned early not to have all this attachment to this physicality of who I was, and that who I was this spark of divinity that's meant to shine in my life. And so because of that, I feel like one of the great gifts in being strong in that spark of the divinity of who we are is with the situation that happened with my leg. I didn't grow up in a certain sense looking to be validated and told I was strong and I was this great person or anything like that because of what I went through with my leg. Because I didn't see that as I lived more in the truth of that divinity because it was great that I did have parents that encouraged that. And I know it's harder for people when they haven't been, they got to find it themselves. I mean, and we're all on a journey to find it ourselves.
Yeah, it's just, I see these people using it as this like self-defense thing. They think it defends them because they don't have to let people see who they really are. And and many will feel if you see who I really am, you're not going to like me, or you're gonna judge me for who I really am, and that could be painful.
Well, then that's the false power. I mean, we know this clearly. Like, again, I always go back to, because I like to talk about the ego is just something that was placed in us for the emerging of our survival, but it's something meant to be shed. You see this clearly with the bully. The bully is the person who, really doesn't feel really good about themselves. And so you see this with psychological bullies later in life. Again, it's this childish behavior that's taken on an adult mask. You see this in the workplace a lot.
Oh yeah, there are disempowering boundaries and
barriers.
There are these. Yeah, I mean these barriers are just you see it all the time. The workplace is a great example. You see it because I'm the boss and I tell you what to do because I am the boss. And when it's not about getting great results for the business, it's about throwing your own authority around and throwing your weight around to get this kind of reaction from people and to get this validation for yourself and how powerful you are.
Okay, so I have something that's an important understanding when we run into those situations, whether they're in the workplace or any other environment, that it seems like when people are on those little power trips and they come into your space and they want to rattle your cage of who you are, when you know and you can clearly recognize and identify that is really just a small person who's blown up their ego to feel big in this world, then you can actually start to put space so you're not reacting back by you becoming small and trying to blow up this false personality in order to interact with this person. And when you can place it in that proper perspective, you don't give your power away to that. Life will have its fall for this person because you can't operate in this falsified place forever and ever and ever, because life will soften you. And that's been always my thing. I come back to why I can take an honest look at whatever ways that I feel that ego is coming into my life or operating, as I'm like, I know I got to check it right there at the door. I got to check it right there in that moment, because I know life will soften. So what will soften you with having something so hard and strong in your life like that's of the ego orientation. And so I say to myself, I'm going to do it for myself first before life has to do it.
Yeah, because it's a prison. This place of ego it can be very difficult to break out of that, because if this becomes your way of living,
it actually becomes a form of a comfort zone.
Yeah, and you're all icing and no cake. It's all about how it looks on the outside and trying to keep up appearances and things like that. And you see these people, going out that can't afford to buy the new car, they go out and buy the new car. They can't afford to do this, but they do it anyway, to try to keep up these outside appearances. I mean, that is not an empowering place to be. That is a prison. If you are living in there, you are in prison.
Okay, so I got another prison I want to talk about, because I totally agree that it does show up in these really obvious ways like you're talking about, Jack. But I also think there's other ways that it shows up in our lives where people are staying in marriages, jobs, careers, because they're afraid to break out. And they don't realize that how much of their ego is keeping them there, because they're afraid of what other people will think. They're afraid of what they may go through that may make them not look good. Mm-hmm. And so those are prisons. There are people today that are living in what we would say that's a good life. But deep down inside, they know they're in prison. They know that their marriage is not thriving, it's not good, and that they're afraid to break out of that because of what others may think of them, or how they may look bad, or the discomfort it may cause them to have to do that. Because again, I go back to is that the ego was placed, and it's something we're meant to shed in the earlier part of our lives to protect us for survival. That's it. It's just a survival mechanism.
How is it a survival mechanism?
Well, it's okay. So it's a lower level survival mechanism, in the sense that when a child comes in, this is a part of that personality that you see emerging in its common place, where I'm important, I matter. and give me validation to let me know that. Because if a child doesn't get that validation back, their ability to thrive is not the same as the child that is noticed, that is honored, that is nurtured. But then I think about, okay, so it's like, think about it like because it's the vulnerability of needing that survival to matter in this world of life. So the plant that becomes the tree, it's like my kids just went to the sequoias, had their picture taken with the largest living thing on earth, which was the great Sherman sequoia tree.
Wow.
They went with good friends of ours. So what a great, okay, now here's my point. It starts out and it's in a very vulnerable state when anything starts out. It's like let's say a plant, and it could easily be demolished, it could easily be crushed, all these things. And what happens is that the ego is what's placed in us when we're young to matter in this world, to get our needs met, to flourish and to get nourished in what we need. But there becomes a part where we're strong enough on our own to reach for the skies.
All right, this is good stuff, Ann. Really good stuff. But we are going to take a quick commercial break to give some props to Spreaker. Spreaker is the platform that we use to come to you at this radio show, and you too can start your own radio show using Spreaker. And we'll be right back after this quick commercial break. Okay, and we are back with the Empower 11 live radio show. We got about a half hour left, and we are talking about the going beyond the trappings of the ego. We are talking about how the ego is a lower state of living and could really really hinder you from getting to that true place and letting that trueness of who you are out, that wonderfulness that is inside of you to emerge and blossom and flower. And you were, I interrupted you, I think, when we were...
Needing to go to commercial. Well, you didn't interrupt me. I just want to return back to this when you were saying how does the ego help us for our survival? And I was saying that it's that part of us that is it's designed to be there for the beginning part of our lives to help us matter for our survival. Mm-hmm. And I was given the example of the tree and how pretty soon it's big enough that it can just reach for the sky on its own. It doesn't have that same level of vulnerability when a tree is just emerging out of the ground. You can get stepped on, the weather, the elements, so many things can. Now, what I was going to say is that, so think about it like this. A lot of times when we clearly know we want a tree right here and we're growing it from the ground up, what we do is we create, we protect it. We put something around it. Mm-hmm. And that's identification that this matters and we're going to leave it be. And this idea that the conversation that I just really want people to understand is that the ego it's not this enemy and this thing that we have to fight as if this is some piece of something wrong with us. What it is it was part of God's divine plan of this part of our survival that was put in for us to serve us when we were young. And it's allowing ourselves to evolve into all the possibilities that we can be. So it's interesting. I planted an apple tree when my kids were really young, toddlers. So it's now, they're 12 and 9. They went back and visited the apple tree. And it's big with big apples on it and stuff. And what's interesting, if you follow that evolvement, which is the same thing that we have to ask of ourselves, is before you get the apple, the big fruit, the juice of it all, that most...
You're making me hungry for an apple.
No, but before it even goes there, it's a process where the apples come from the flower that then sheds itself, that then becomes the bud, that then becomes the apple, which now can build an orchard and feed lots of people and give lots of fruit. But it's a shedding. it goes through in order to become the apple.
Right.
And
Wow.
so that's back to what I was saying, is that the conversation I wanted to have today about the ego is just placing it in a different place inside of us to understand that it's just more of the ego was there to serve us at a certain period of time to protect us, and it's more of an immature state. But what's happened is now we have a large collective human condition where it has lived on in this immaturity into adulthood, because then you got these same adults raising children, and that's how it doesn't break the cycle, and we can all break the cycle. And that's how we end wars, because so many wars are fought over just this ego state. It's like the things things I'll watch my boys start getting in a fight and getting over, they're silly.
Yeah.
They're silly. And it's like, this is because they have not evolved to find other ways to resolve this positionalness and this needing to be right and this needing to overpower. And
yeah, but it's appropriate when they're young and finding their way, but all too often that people don't grow up out of this. I've seen this all
absolutely
the time, especially in business situations I've been in. I've been in businesses where like everybody likes to point the finger. They're like constantly like pointing the fingers at people. They're like they just love to throw somebody under the bus because it makes them feel better about themselves, and they can't ever look at what they could do to make things better. It has to be about what somebody else did wrong.
Well, it's funny you say that, Jack, because that's the first thing when you're helping your kids sort out their conflict. It's always about that. It's always about the other person. And it's harder to look at, okay, what was your responsibility in this? But, through that practice, and if a child growing up hasn't had enough practice with that through their environment, through the home that they were living in, then what happens is then life has to do it for them later in life. And it's so much harder because it's much more entrenched, this orientation of this persona and personality in it.
So afraid to lose this false power. So afraid to lose something that isn't even real.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, I'm going to fight to the death to keep this something that is not, it's just false. It's just fake. And let's talk about these disconnects, because many families, have siblings that aren't talking. They're, people say, hey, if you're not going to support my egoic ways, I am just going to, shut you out, shun you.
Yeah.
And
emotional freeze-outs.
Yeah,
emotional freeze-outs.
The cost is just huge. The
Yeah.
enormous cost of losing a relationship, of a person, of a family member or something. And I've had that in my family like many times where people just don't
common.
talk to each other for years. In fact, I've been a part of that. I've been a part of like people in my family that love that, there's been this love there, and it's just like crazy, there's also times where it's just like I've had to pull back a little bit just because it's a little insane. But I mean,
I want to talk about that.
That's not about what. More often you see it's because somebody has this huge thing where they got to be right about something. They just got to.
Well, even if they don't want to be right, they want to cause you pain.
Yeah.
By doing an emotional freeze out.
Mm-hmm.
People don't understand that. People think they're protecting themselves when they do emotional, because they say, "Oh, I just can't hang in that energy." And I always go back.
But they're not. They're costing themselves. They're paying the largest price.
Well, I always think about this, is like, sometimes I know we need to take breaks to get ourselves stronger from situations that could cause us to go into places and interact in ways that we're trying to heal ourselves of. And it's recognizing that is okay and that is safe to do. But emotional freeze-outs, these are when we are actually using our ego in order to make someone feel bad or to isolate. And this happens a lot. isolate them out of our lives in order to, on some level, make them feel bad and inflict a sort of psychological painful feeling in them.
And if I can make you feel pain, that means I'm winning and I'm even more right.
Oh, I know that. I know a lot of people that have functioned that way too. Now, what I go back to is I always think like when you get so right with yourself in that divine oneness, in that empowered 11 state where you have oneness on the inside, and you can take that and create that oneness out into the world. That is the state that Jesus walked the earth and lived in. Do you think that he had to do emotional freeze-outs in order to get himself stronger? Or did he know he was the divine child of God that he was?
No, he did emotional freeze-outs. I'm sure of it. Yeah. Haven't you read in the Bible? Emotional freeze-outs.
So this is my Jack. I just love how he brings so much laughter and light to the funness of life. Anyway, yeah. So I look at that if I'm not strong enough to do that, then I get myself strong enough to do that place where I can walk anywhere and be in any situations. I've been in uncomfortable situations where there's been emotional freeze-outs happening. Yeah. Actually, I ran into a situation where I had really close friends, and then there was this whole big thing that happened that involved business and money, and there was a large group of friends that were involved in this, and it created a lot of damage, and there was like really a lot of damage, and relationships were lost over this. That's back to what you were saying, Jack, that a lot of relationships get lost over this, and there was a lot of people.
It's good to mix friends and money and business. Yeah, it's always a good combination.
Well, because this brings it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, geez. So, then there's this other part about getting offended. When people get offended, I mean, that's usually more of an egoic place. Because if there wasn't truth in it, then you wouldn't be getting so offended. If somebody just said something about you that you knew there was just so no truth in it, so you wouldn't matter, really wouldn't matter to you. But yeah, you get offended. It's usually because there's truth in there, or you're really wrapped up in how other people think about you.
Oh, yeah. I want to make sure we have time to go over how people can change this, Jack, how people can really get past the trap of the ego. I mean, we've talked a lot about how it really traps us. I want to make sure that we have enough time to give people the tools to unlock this.
And that's what I would like. That's what I really love, Ann, about what we're doing is, all too often I see these books and stuff about, what this problem is, and they go on and on about the problem, and then they give you very little to no type of tools or solutions to help you through that. They just they regurgitate this whole thing about the problem with America today, and the problem with this, and the problem with that, and all this stuff. But where are the solutions? I mean, that is where the real gems and jewels are.
Well, that's where we can create the results in our lives. I mean, the awareness can, knowing what the problem is, can open up our eyes so we can see things clearer. But when we're actually, mapped out a plan on how to get the results we want.
Yeah. So one of the things that I use, and we're going to cover these in no particular order or anything, but one of the things that I've really found that's really cool is appreciating when I find out that I'm wrong.
Oh yeah.
And I see that as that is so powerful to find out I'm doing something wrong instead of for instance, okay, so I downloaded I researched and purchased this program to help me do a certain thing with websites. And if any of you know much about me, I'm into internet marketing and that kind of stuff. And so I downloaded this, and this is over a year ago, and I couldn't get this thing to work. And I'm following the instructions and stuff to the T, and but it's just not working. And there was this part of me that was like, well, this software is BS. This is crap. It's them. They put out an inferior product. It's them. And then recently, I found that what happened when I downloaded it is it unzipped, and I wasn't re-zipping it and uploading it all together into the website. I was doing it in little chunks and stuff, and then it didn't work properly. I appreciated finding out that I was doing it wrong, and there was power in that, in all of our stuff, being open to discover and really appreciating that you're not always going to be right, and when you discover that you're wrong, that is a cool thing. That is a really good thing. You don't lose any portion of yourself, you only gain.
Yeah, so it went from being software that was BS, that once you found out that you were doing it wrong and how to do it in a way that it worked for you, you thought, wow, it was now the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, it's the coolest thing since sliced bread, which I invented. Along with the internet.
Well, I'm going to talk about how meditation, because this is one of my favorite things, because I feel like our life should become a living meditation where we're actually capable of practicing self-awareness and practicing openness and really getting to that stillness where we can begin to separate everything that's externalized out there in the world, from people to situations to events. How do we bring space so that we can create some separation in that, so we come home to the true person, to the truth of who we are? And in that space and in that stillness, then we go back out and we're influencing the external world differently. I call that getting inside your life. There was a time and a place in my life where I felt I was outside of my life, where I felt like whatever winds blew, and I was, in the configurations with business and my marriage and things, I felt so outside of influencing what I could do to make changes. And getting into this place of meditation, practicing more stillness, getting open and self-awareness, that led me to make changes. That allowed me to actually, I really feel, soften more of that whole ego part of who I was. It helped me. Meditation was such a powerful tool in that.
When you tap into that truthful tune of who you are, that is just such a beautiful tune. Yeah, it's such a wonderful ease and grace place to be. Ego is more force and manipulation and things like that all too often give you nowhere near kind of results that you're looking for.
That's why when we began the Empower 11 courses, one of the things that Jack said initially was, before someone begins on this to Empower 11 through the courses, is they've got to get open. And that's where we created the Empower Flex program. And it was interesting because one of our participants, who just with the coursework of the getting open, which was some of the stuff in the Empower Flex, had a major life transformation. I mean, their business sold for big bucks, and it came out of the blue. But that comes from getting open. That comes from allowing ourselves to be receivers.
Yeah, and I developed all that course material myself. Ann didn't have anything to do with it. I just put her name on there so it wouldn't seem so egoic.
And what's so funny is I can take all this so lightly because I know this isn't true about him. We really do have a beautiful rapport relationship, that neither one of us strive to be right in any of our positions. We just strive to make things better. Right
on. I mean, I am like so cool with being wrong, that's just fine. Yeah, I just want to make things better, and it's a more grown up place to be, and one of the things that I strive for is to stop taking myself so seriously. And when I stop taking myself so seriously, then it becomes less of a big deal. It's like it's a more fluid place. It's less positional, and the ability to laugh at yourself. I'm like, oh my God, and And I, I even tell stories that sometimes don't seem like that empowering to me. I'm able to laugh at myself, like
Yeah.
I this is a small example, but I got out of my car, went into the store, quickly saw they didn't have what I wanted. I came out of the car, I got in, I looked down at my seat, and there's this black stuff all over my seat, and I have a tan interior. I'm like, what is going on? And then I look over the passenger seat, and there's somebody sitting there, and she looks at me like terrified and says, wrong car. So I'm able to laugh at myself about that. I don't think that makes me stupid or less than because I did a stupid thing. I just because I did a stupid thing does not mean I'm a stupid person.
And you embrace being wrong by getting out of the car and going into the right one.
I quickly embraced before she called the cops. Yes. Yeah. Okay, moving on.
Yeah, so I just want to say something about when you don't take... See, this is that place about the Empower 11 stance, is that whatever you're offering up, life is going to mirror it back to you. So if you're ego tripping and you need power, then life is going to exert that power back to you. That's how it softens it. So if you're taking yourself seriously, life is going to give you things to take serious in life. It's just, if you can lighten up and be in flow and ease, then life will mirror that back to you, a flow and an ease.
Acceptance. It's just this place of accepting what is what is, and instead of being in a place where no, I can't accept that. It mustn't be that way. La 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 la. Can't hear you. This isn't really happening. That kind of thing to live in this pretend world when you can accept reality for what it is and see the power in that versus no, that's too hard. I couldn't do that. I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing, and I went to Michigan, saw a friend of mine. He's in a drywall business. He used to have crews of guys, and Michigan is hard hit. And now it's just him, and he's too old to be hanging drywall, but yet he keeps doing it, and somehow thinks it's going to get better or something. It's this acceptance thing. I think it's starting to really come on him now. He's starting to have to, but it's if he would have got out in front of his life with this acceptance part, I think he could have managed to have a change much quicker.
Yeah, I always talk about that with you, Jack. I really admire that part that you will get to the acceptance for what is like really quickly. For myself, I just want to talk about I'm finding that place. I find that for me, when I got ran over by a lawnmower when I was 2, there was nowhere like that was forced upon me, and I had nothing to do but to accept it. And I did well. I have done very well in my life accepting the terms of what has happened to me. And where I really felt like it took a lot inside of me is when I had to make the choice instead of life forcing it in such a clear way on me. And I think and that's what I admire about you, is I feel like you can, and that has to do with all your recovery work too that you've done, is internalizing that change and that acceptance. I look at like the changes I made career and with my marriage and all that stuff. I felt like that was so hard to get into this deep place of acceptance and do what I needed to do because it had to come internally. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like this external event that happened that caused me to have to accept it. But that's where the juice is in life. That's where the good stuff is when we can get to that place quicker. And that is going beyond the ego and caring so much about what people think and all the things that traps us in from making those internal changes.
Well, yeah, it's taken a lot of hard work to really get to the place of acceptance, and it continues to be, something that you need to keep revisiting and keep taking a few steps back and looking at things. But really, I've gotten it's just this internal greatness of who I am. This
This
just
good.
this mega God that I am. See, is
Okay, well, this is good that you're talking about that, because what I want to talk about is on a serious note. No, this is serious. I'm just
careful.
kidding.
Don't take yourself too seriously. It says right here in our notes. Remember, stop taking yourself so seriously.
Is this original knowing, is tapping into our original knowing, which is that source of divine and that source of greatness that we come from and that we're destined to be and who we are, and internalizing and tapping into and activating that, where we become this living empowered 11 state, where we empower that oneness on the inside with who we're meant to be on the outside and live out into the world.
That is the beautiful thing, man. That is where that beauty is. And just like graciousness and gifts come to you when you get into this place. I mean, it is amazing how the powers of manifestation can just accelerate, and your thoughts become things, and your ideas, and you become excited about life. Waking up in the middle of the night and having to write something down because it's like that cool, and because you are in that groovy zone, man.
Well, I want to talk about real quick before we sign off here and close out the hour, is this part about taking yourself too serious. Is so we've talked about the ego, and we've talked about how it starts in our childhood, and it's really an immature place that if we don't shed it and become greater than that, it can really hold us back in our adult life.
Don't worry, you'll get there. Just keep working on it.
Is going back to this place where you don't take yourself so seriously, is then coming to that place again where Jesus will always talk about to be as little children. It's to be as little children is to then return back with all the wisdom, the knowledge, the evolvement, and not to be this immature little person, but to be this light person that doesn't take themselves so seriously and that can embrace and be open and gracious with this understanding of life and other people, even giving that graciousness to other people where we don't have to be right, because we know they're on their own journey and they'll figure it out.
Yeah. It really makes me think about also this place of really good giving or sharing of what you have and who you are. And there's place of giving where it's like you really have to be acknowledged for the gift that you get. I did this for you, and then also like projecting well, I did this for him, and I just thought that because I did that for him, then he would do this for me, and he would react this way, or I gave him $5,000 or $10,000, and I thought he would do this with it, but yet then he went and did that with it. And the greatest giving that I've ever done, the guy has no idea that I did it for him, and I don't know what it is about that one, is because there's no ego involved. You don't want credit for it. It's like, it did it. It was a good thing to do, and I had the means to do it, so I did it, and I never had to get any credit.
Well, you're naturally a giver anyway, Jack. I mean, and you just share that with whoever you are and whatever you do share that giving and knowledge.
Well, I really enjoy giving to you, Ann, in that special way.
Yes. So it's like ultimately that's the place we want to get. When you said the guy doesn't even know, but it's to get to this place where we just give and there's no ego involved that attaches strings and expectations that totally edge out God in the experience of it.
So, Ann, you have prepared something for to end the show with that you want to read. So we are coming to the end of the hour, so you want to go ahead and do that?
Yes, so anybody, wherever you're at, I ask you just to take a few minutes, get still, whether you're driving in your car, whether you're at work, whether you're at your home, just cooking in your kitchen, wherever it is, just take a few minutes and get still. And I'm going to ask you how to embrace this magnificence of who you are. What if this day was going to be the greatest day of your life? How would you feel in this moment? All the minor nuisances and heartaches and pains, they would all become non-relevant. All the aches and pains would be forgotten. If you were going to walk into the greatest day of your life, how would you greet every face in your day, knowing that the greatest thing ever was going to happen to you today? You would let all of yesterday go because you would know what today holds for you, that you're going to walk into the greatest day ever for you. In that state, you would join that great poet Rumi about the caravan that he wrote about that still echoes in the universe because of the truth it was based on. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of living, it doesn't matter. Come. Even if you've broken your vow 100 times, come again. Ours is not a caravan of despair. The universal presence that is the all-giving offering of life asks you to join the celebration of this day. Start where you are. Let your own possibilities in a magnificent life be that caravan of hope for others to follow. In Power 11, it's a state of oneness on the inside with the world you want to create on the outside. Join the community of movement in your way with your day. Become a part of those who want a peaceful, miraculous world for you, for your children, and for all of life on the planet, Earth and beyond. Wishing you an empowered 11 day. And we'll see you next week.